combating homelessness, it's been in the works according to the statement you released. So $65 million, can you just walk me through what this money is going to do to combat that?
The way the money breaks down is it's around $65 million. About $3 million of that is planning money, and then around over $56 million is the money that will help us, after the plan is done, help us put together another non-congregate shelter facilities, and it will be operated by the Other Ones Foundation, which has been operating a shelter here in Austin for some time. They founded and created what we know as Esperanza, and this will be an expansion of Esperanza. Then there's about $5 million that will be split evenly between Caritas and LifeWorks. Those are two nonprofit organizations that will have this additional money so that they can do what, housing stabilization with it. In some instances, that'll mean rental assistance, the kind of things where either you're in a situation where you can prevent somebody from going into homelessness, or somebody that is there, but you can rapidly get them back into housing. So what this does is it helps us address some really serious needs that we have in Austin. We need more emergency shelter space. We only have space in Austin right now for 1 in 5 people that need it, and this will make a big difference in that.
And I know for the Other Ones Foundation, the shelter's supposed to add at least 700 beds.
Yeah, the goal is, so we're behind in Austin. It was reported by the folks that operate the part of the city that focuses on homeless. When they reported to the council just the other day as part of the proposed budget process, we're about 1,000 beds short of what we need when it comes to this part of addressing people that are living homeless. What the goal is here is to get us up another 700 through this money. So you can see it will make a big dent in what our goals are. In addition to that, of course, we have also, just last week, the council voted to create more bed space at the marshalling yard, which will be, again, that'll be a congregate shelter. And then, of course, the city has leased what used to be the Salvation Army facility in downtown, so that we'll have that available as well. And we also have 2 bridge shelters, both north and south, that's part of our HEAL initiative.
And I know you guys said $65 million, and you called it an investment, between the city and the state. How did you guys arrive at that number, since you said you've been kind of a months-long process to get there?
Well, I relied a lot on what was available at the state level. We have been working with the state. We probably would have been able to do this a little sooner, except there was that legislative session that got in the way for a lot of us, and we got busy on that. But the way that works is the state has received certain amounts of money from the federal government, and they were then providing it to local communities. And in this instance, we looked to see what would be the available funds and how we could get those funds directed to Austin. In the instance of the money that'll be stabilization money that will go, the $5 million, part of that was that the state of Texas has been providing money that the federal government had provided to it and had put it out into the state, and had done such a good job of it that the federal government provided some additional money where other states hadn't done as good a job. So Texas got to take advantage of that, and that's part of the money that Austin is now receiving.
So speaking on funds, we constantly talk about, this money going into homelessness and trying to provide these shelters that Austin lacks, unfortunately, and, meeting that quota of beds. With this money and with the additional beds that are going to be coming in, will you meet that goal by 2025?
I feel comfortable that whether this one maybe not do it right off the bat, right? We may need to do some additional things, and in fact, it would not be a surprise if what we do with the $56 million is that we actually look to create maybe another 2 facilities instead of just 1 facility that gets supplemented and added to. So that's yet to be determined. That's part of the $3 million in planning. But this makes a big step toward meeting our needs by 2025, and we'll continue to figure out how we address that. There will be other things that we'll have to deal with. For example, the contract at the marshaling yard is a one-year contract. The contract with the Salvation Army is a one-year contract. So while this is something that we ought to all be thankful for and we ought to celebrate because it is a real sign of doing well, there will probably need to be additional work done.
Yeah, so jumping off of that was my next question of those temporary beds. So will that kind of, debunk what's already being done with the need for permanent sheltering?
No. One of the things that I think we've lost track of in Austin, because we've tended to make this more of a debate about what we ought to be doing than a conversation. And there has been, in my view, a focus on just one part of the continuum. What we need is the whole continuum. We need prevention, we need rapid rehousing, we need emergency shelter beds, and all the way up to permanent supportive housing. So we need more permanent supportive housing in this community. But we also know that along the way, interventions can make a difference. For example, if you look at the results of people that go into a shelter where they're getting services in that shelter and getting assistance on finding jobs and those sorts of things, over 50% of those people, our neighbors that go into those kind of shelters, end up leaving homelessness. So we can intervene along the way. There will continue to be a need for permanent supportive housing, but that is not the exclusive thing that we ought to be focused on. We ought to focus on all of it, the entire continuum.
And before you took office, there was a more than $500 million effort to address homelessness, but it never really got picked up off the ground. Can you speak to what happened to that money?
Well, part of that money was ARPA money, right? That was ARPA money that the city, and some of it was philanthropy, but the city had dedicated that to primarily permanent supportive housing. And so that money has gone to different entities for the building of permanent supportive housing. This money is different from that because this money will go to meet another need that the city has.
And so, excuse me.
That's all right.
Sorry about that. So, speaking on all these funds, and the need and everybody saying, there's not enough of the sheltering. And, we're talking about the $500 million. Now we're talking about something different, which is $65 million. But for people who are saying there's still not enough being done, what can you say to that?
Well, I would need them to be more specific when they say something that general. But the truth of the matter is that when I came into office, one of the things I said I wanted to do was make sure we were addressing homelessness across the entire continuum of services. And that is what we are now doing. I also said that the camping ban needs to be enforced. The public, the citizens of Austin, voted to enforce the camping ban. The legislature passed legislation that was signed by the governor requiring an enforcement of the camping ban. And you really can't enforce the camping ban effectively and humanely without having more shelter beds. So one of the things that I wanted to do was make sure we have enough shelter beds. Plus, when you talk to people in the encampments throughout the city, many of them have told us that if there was a place for them to go, a shelter, they would like to have a place like that to go. And of course, the humane part of it is that we've got people sleeping under overpasses and in parks and on street corners in 107-degree heat. So my goal is to help build out the continuum, and we're moving with some dispatch. And anyone that says what you just said, I'd say we took a big step today in getting $65 million to move in the right direction.
So speaking about the camping ban, because it is, designated to the downtown area, and a lot of the people who are unhoused have spread farther to South Austin, North Austin, Northwest Austin. So, how can you mitigate that, if there isn't sheltering in those areas?
Well, first of all, the camping ban is not just downtown. The camping ban is throughout the city. It applies throughout the city. That is part of the reason. But to answer your question, while people may be in different parts of the city, we are now trying to provide shelters in the downtown area with the reopening the facility that used to be the Salvation Army. We've got additional beds at the marshaling yard that we've just done in the past week. With this 65 million, we will be able to get more shelter beds, and perhaps, as I said a minute ago, my guess is I want to be smart about this. I want to use the planning money they've given so that we can actually look at that. But my speculation, my educated guess is that probably some of that will have more than one site before it's all said and done. And that will create the beds that we will then be able, for people that are living in various different parts of the city, we can get them to shelters. And as I said a minute ago, over 50% of the people that are being provided services in the shelters, the way we're trying to do that, including the bridge shelters, by the way, both south and north, as part of the HEAL process, HEAL system that we have at the City of Austin, over 50% of them come out of homelessness. So we're going to continue to address that, and it'll be addressed throughout the city.
So how can you enforce the camping ban moving forward, since you said it can't really be done humanely? Well, I said it can't be done effectively and humanely if you don't have more shelter space. Because what happens is that if there's a group of people in an encampment here, and you go to them and say, you can't camp here, where do they go? If you don't have a place for them to go, which is what I'm working to provide, what happens is they go over here. And then you go to them and say, you can't camp here. So in many ways, it's like squeezing a balloon. It pulls out here and pulls out here, but you're not really solving the problem. So what I want to do is create the ability to truly address the issue. And I think well, I know that's what we're doing. And today will be a helpful step in that. And what can you say, because I've talked to some people who live in the camps and they call it home because they've been there for so long. You know, some even say they've been there for years, and they feel that when they go to these shelters, they're just going to go right out because they don't feel like it's safe. I mean, what can you speak to that when it comes to people who just consider these places their homes? Well, first of all, we're going to provide safety. We are also going to provide services. TOOF, for example, at Esperanza now, and I call it TOOF, the other one's foundation, which will be, who's going to be expanding Esperanza. They even provide workforce training. Texas Department of Transportation, which owns the land that's being leased for Esperanza, also provides workforce training. So safety is going to be provided, training is going to be provided, other services are going to be provided, and that's one of the reasons you see over 50% of the people that are in those shelters that get the services coming out of homelessness, not being living homeless again. Of course, there will be some people that will be more difficult with, and we will work to try to address their needs as best we can, so that we can both humanely and recognizing the law meet their needs and the needs of the citizens of Austin. And just, you know,
let me check this other camera. It has a shorter recording duration than that, so I'm just going to make sure we're still on what we do.
Good.
So my next question would just be, you know, you kind of already said you guys are doing everything you can to address this, and this is a big step forward, but just for anybody, advocates, those who are homeless, and just anybody who kind of just feels, well, we've seen this already, funds have already been distributed, but we're still seeing this uptick. What can you speak, you know, and say, well, you guys do care, you know, it's not, for lack of a better word, BS.
The effort is pretty strong, and when you see the effort to receive $65 million so that people will be able to not live under bridges, not live in our parks, not live on our street corners in 107-degree heat. When you see us, as we did like just last week, vote to put money into an emergency shelter at the marshalling yard on city-owned property. When you see that kind of effort going into it, we're doing what we can. We're doing what we can as best we can to address the issue. And what I would say to those who might say, well, that's not enough, come join us. Be a part of it. Help us do this, because we wanted to do it well, we want to do it right, and we want to meet the needs of the citizens of the city, our residents here, and also those who are living homeless.
And my final question would be, if they have the opportunity to watch this or, see your message, what do you have to say to those who are currently experiencing homelessness? That
we're working to provide facilities so that they can get the services they need so that they do not have to live homeless.
Is there anything else I missed or anything you want to add?
I think we're good. I think you covered the difference between the whole Washington
Finding ATX.
Finding ATX and these funds. Do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, I want to be very clear about something. In order for us to address the issues we have with the number of people in Austin that are living homeless, and to be able to enforce the camping ban like the voters told us we needed to do. That vote was before I was mayor, but that was in 2021. But it's one that I, as mayor now, have to enforce. We have to put together the entire continuum. There can't be just a focus on one aspect of it. And what you're seeing me attempt to do is work on everything from prevention to permanent supportive housing. And you're seeing me work with the state government so that what we're able to do is access $65 million that the city wouldn't otherwise have, so that we can create more emergency shelter beds, something that we know we are way behind on. But this will help us get right up to where we need to go. We still have a ways to go, but it puts a big dent in it. So what you will see me continue to do is advocate for the full continuum so that we can not only address the needs of those of our neighbors that are living homeless, but also address the desires of the voters of the city of Austin when they told us the way they wanted us to address those living homeless.
And just for my knowledge, I understand you guys are just expanding the sheltering that TOOF is providing,
Yeah,
correct?
Okay. It'll be an expansion of Esperanza.
And do you guys have a timeline on when that'll be
done? We got $3 million to plan. There is a time deadline on the funding, so it will have to be committed sometime in 2025. So what we will now do is immediately get with TDHCA and for the $3+ million for planning purposes and start the planning process.